told you, no one's got the Powerball down.
Hey, this is Robbie. Welcome back to the TKM Performance channel. Today I want to go over valves. Certain things with valves and profiles and technicalities with racing engine valves specifically. So this first valve right here I want to talk about. This is an actual LS3 intake valve. So as you notice, if the camera can see it, it has a very, very, very narrow margin. Margin is actually the thickest part closest to the seat of the head of the valve there, is what I'm measuring. So this is close to a little over 40 thousandths. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the dish that's in these and profiles and stuff like that. So a typical engine valve, this is actually out of the LS7 cylinder head. This is a titanium valve, a lot more margin. And that's close to 65 or 70. So that being said, in a racing engine, I would rather have more margin, of course a titanium for weight, and usually a flat face, which is like this. So this valve right here, this has got a flat face on it. So particularly what we do here at TKM Performance is turbo engines. So with the heats, the power levels that these engines make, having a flat face, thicker margins, and of course titanium and Inconel materials for the exhaust is what we got to have to keep these motors alive. So if I'm running this particular valve, which this is the stock LS3 valve, in that environment, all it's going to do is pull it in what we call tube the engine valve. And a lot of people try to use these because you see it on the internet all the time. They get away with it, but this is actually a time bomb. This could really cause you some large damage. We're talking about block, piston, cylinder head damage, the whole nine. So that's why we do, several of the things that we do here. Like most of the time, I try to upgrade to an extreme duty type valve, to as far as the materials to keep and margins and stuff to keep this stuff alive. As far as the profiles and valves and materials. Every cylinder head is going to need something different. Some valves come with neck downs here. Some cylinder heads need it. This one has what we call an undercut, if you can see that profile right there. Majority of your valves, your stock stuff, doesn't have that. It's just got a basic forged profile there, and there's power in a lot of this stuff, especially when you start making power and you're buying cylinder heads that flow a lot more than your stock type cylinder heads. Also, as far as exhaust valves, same thing. As far as material wise, in a turbo world, because like I said, we're 90% turbo. We try to either run a tie valve in an M1 situation, or we're going to run an Inconel valve like this one here if we have to run race gas in a turbo motor, because you can't run tie because the exhaust valve will melt in a race gas situation with a turbo because of the heat that it generates. And the material is wide. Like Inconel can withstand like loads and loads of heat, and that's what we got. The exhaust side is where all the heat's at. Everybody with a turbo knows that. Same thing. Some of them come with neck down profiles. It just depends on what cylinder head you guys are running. And most of the Inconel stuff has a dish, and I have to do the dish because of the weight, because the Inconel valve is so much more heavier than your tie stuff. And majority of my tie exhaust valves is flat, like this intake right here. So that's a little bit about materials, valves here at TKM Performance. The biggest thing I have to take in consideration with materials on intake and exhaust is the first thing I look at is what fuel are we running, because M1 runs like, I don't know the specific number, but 200% cooler than regular race gas. So that's where that Inconel and titanium come into it. You want to run a titanium in that environment, and race gas and a turbo in that environment. I have to run an Inconel because the tie valve won't stay there. So that's the exhaust side. And the intake side, it really doesn't matter the fuel, but the power level, RPM, cubic inches, how much boost you're running. There's a certain level there, usually above 1,500 horsepower, like if you're not, you know, going tie, at least tie intake valves, you really hurt yourself, because I can't make the stainless stuff live in that environment. And mainly because of RPM, because a stainless valve, you can't turn over 8,200 RPM. And most of these guys that run these turbo cars are 8,000, 8,500. They'd be running through the traps, 84, 8,500, and this will get destroyed. So that's when the tie valve is really, really needed on the intake side as well. So in a street application, so nowadays, let's just, being as I have LS valve in my hand, let's just talk about an LS platform. Because there's different platforms out there, 2-valve, but let's just stay there. So this is fine for 400 or 500 horsepower, you know, stoplight to stoplight. You know, the heat is relatively low. I mean, you're not pushing that motor on the street like you would at the racetrack. So even though these are relatively light, and then usually the camshafts and stuff for a street motor is not as aggressive as it is for a race car. So, you know, the added, you know, the need for, you know, anything racy like this tie valve right here, it's just not needed. Now, race car, and it's like I said before, like you have to, you know, in a certain level, when you start, you know, turning more RPM, and you're making more power, and you're making more heat, and you're creating, and anytime you can get weight out in a race car too, as far as, you know, valve train pieces, which is why you need the tie. First and foremost, it would be this on anything above 500 horsepower, which 90% of the, you know, I'll go back to the LS guys who will come in here and bring me LS3 cylinder heads with these in it and just want valve springs on it, and they're gonna make 1,200 horsepower. And I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen. So you will eat this, like, and you'll be back mad at me. Yeah, so. That's one. The second thing is valve springs. There's a lot to the valve spring stuff, but having enough valve spring for what you're doing, especially turbo, you know, you're creating back pressure, which is another, you know, valve train issue over top of the harmonics that you'll have with aggressive profiles, RPM, you know, heavier parts, you know, when you start running stock stuff. So you know, the appropriate match valve spring for the application would be another pet peeve of mine as well. I've built in, you know, earlier in my career I did it all, you know, anything from the machining to, you know, building the engine and dyno and stuff, but been involved with racing engines and cylinder head and camshaft, you know, technology for right at 24 years now. I like the diversity, to be honest. We're not a cookie cutter and build the same motor every week. We work on anything from Coyotes, 4.654 overhead cams, LS Gen 3 Hemis, all the way up to your high-end, you know, Billet Gen 3 Hemi stuff, SE2 Fords, big blocks, you know, drag week. Like, it's, and for me, a person in my position here at TKM, that helps me learn. I learn the dynamics of different applications, and sometimes I can apply that to other applications. That really helps.